Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I have my microphone positioned perfectly so I can't see Satya's face.
I was about to say.
I've been maneuvering, trying to get comfortable, and this is the position I've chosen. But no, thanks for coming back and listening to what we have to say and trusting us with your health and fitness content.
That's right.
Satya's got a topic for us today that she's going to spring on us here shortly, but first, a little bit of banter to break the ice.
Yeah. Well, speaking of health, the health part of health and fitness, our kids are both sick right now.
Boom.
My son has a cold, which is like his millionth cold of the season, it feels like. Your daughter's puking.
Yep.
And I wanted to know what your go-to hack for immunity is, even with kids. Like, what do you do when your kids just keep getting sick and their immunity just seems like it's in the crapper and you know it's going to go all around the family?
Well, I don't know if I have like something that I can pinpoint, and I'm certainly not immune to getting the stuff that goes around the house.
Yeah.
But I tend to get it either last or sometimes miss it for the family. And I have to attribute that to just like my daily rituals. I think the things that I believe impact my, keep my immune system like vibrant are all the same things that we preach for like general health and wellness, daily movement, good food choices, and this is why the food choice is important, because when your digestive system is happy and intact and not hyperinflamed, then you have a more robust immune response to other pathogens. I don't have the substantiated, research papers to throw at you, but your digestive system is where the biggest and largest, quantity, presence of immune cells resides in the body. So there's more immune cells in and around the digestive system than anywhere else. So if you have a hyperinflamed gut and there's things that are, problematic going on there, it's only going to just like take those resources and make your immune system more heavily focused on that, not on, fighting the cold virus or whatever that's in your nasopharynx or so, okay. Anyway, so good movement each day to keep the immune system, active and blood flowing around your body and general metabolic process healthy. Good food to keep the gut intact. And then the cold exposure, the daily cold exposure, or call them these thermal pressures that people are talking about, seems to be growing research on cold exposure being good for immune function. I'm the only one in the family that does cold exposure.
Yeah.
That might, that's maybe the outlier. And yeah. And then for digestive support, if you're, taking some digestive support, supplements, maybe that's impactful, like good probiotics too. And I'm the only one that drinks, fermented milk every day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So these are my things. But what about you? How do you combat this, or what is your go-to? What do you start doing when everyone's sick? When it's probably too late, but what's your like? Okay, this is my magic voodoo that I gotta try.
Yeah, I mean, the only magic voodoo that I think has ever really made an impact for me was the oregano oil, and I used to do that. I was in the routine of kind of cycling on and off it during the cold flu winter season. And because I remember there was one year where I just kept getting sick and my coach, Shauna, was like, hey, just get on that oregano oil. And it really helped. So I don't know if it's placebo though, who knows?
Well, no, I think there's definitely some support for that, and oftentimes like oils, plant oils, and, there's, whatever the compound is in oregano oil, that is like the bioactive compound that they may extract and then go put into like a cold medicine or go put into like some other formula, like you have it in your oregano oil, you're getting it from the source. I'm not sure what that is, but I used to do that too. And oregano oil is just pretty foul tasting, and you got to like just take it. And so I could never mask it, and it's certainly trying to put it in anything else made that other thing taste terrible.
It's terrible, but I got used to it because because every morning I still do like a lemon salt water.
Yeah.
And then I would just take the oregano oil and then you do the lemon salt as the chaser, and that helped break up the taste. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you feel the value to it and you believe in it and you can get past it, it's just like eating raw liver. It's like, hey, I know I think this is really good for me, so I'm going to eat it. But my story about oregano oil, which I've told you before, I think it was, you buy oregano oil online and it's like, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to get like, I don't know, whatever the oregano oil droplets are.
Right.
And then I bought, like, you can get like vanilla extract, which is like really concentrated. I think I bought like an oregano extract.
I remember this because you texted me when this happened.
And so it was like, you're supposed to take like 3 drops of the oil.
Yeah. I
took 1 dropper full of the extract, which is probably like the equivalent of like 500 droplets of oregano oil. And I thought my whole entire like esophagus was going to melt. I was like, it was so vile. And, I think that was kind of when I stopped the whole thing.
I could see that just being the end, the end of the oregano oil train. Ooh, your text was like FML exclamation mark.
Yeah. Don't get the oregano extract of oregano. Make sure it's not that. This should be banned off of Amazon. This is like a fucking.
It should come with a major warning label.
This is like a total April Fool's joke. I just got played. Okay, well here we go.
Okay.
We're talking about
fitness trackers.
Yeah. What's a fitness tracker example so people have reference to what we're talking about?
Oh, you've got your Fitbit, you've got your Apple Watch, you've got your Whoop, your Oura Ring, any of those gadgets.
All of the
Garmin,
wearables. All of the wearables.
The wearable devices.
When they're on your person, they give you feedback about your fitness. Some will give you feedback about your sleep. Some will give feedback about all kinds of biomarkers.
Biohacking.
Yes. And what do we want to address today? Because we've had a few questions come through recently.
Yeah, we have had questions. And I think this is a great topic because there is so much misunderstanding. And I think that it's a little bit deceptive because these devices sort of couch themselves as being all-knowing, all-seeing, reliable, quote-unquote data. But I think that the way that we're using it in the world that we operate in is more, how can I get this data so that I can make educated decisions about my health and my fitness and what I'm doing in my workout each day and what I'm doing in my activity levels each day, my sleep. What are the things that impact not only how I perform in the gym, but also how I feel day to day in my health? I think that that's the context. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of these are being marketed as sort of like, here's the look inside of your body that you need to make decisions in your life. And that's really a powerful statement.
Yeah.
It's like, if anybody's familiar with the Theranos Scandal, which was basically this, I think there was a documentary on Netflix that outlined it, but essentially there was like this new technology that this company came forward with that said, hey, with a prick of your fingertip, we can extract enough information from 1 droplet of blood, essentially, and that droplet of blood is going to tell us everything about your biomarkers and all of your chemistries and the things that you would normally need to go and get phlebotomists to take vials and vials of blood. Wow, what a technology. That's right. That could, and it was like, with this technology, we're going to open the door to people understanding their health better than ever before, and then making decisions based on that. Well, turns out the technology didn't actually work. And it was just a big scandal because there was billions of dollars that were getting, people's health was in the, was this sort of in the balance. It was like, hey, here's your blood test results from the finger prick, and none of the information was accurate. So someone, let's say they're like, oh, your cholesterol's high. I don't know that this was actually happening, and a lot of people were, going on prescription medications as a result of seeing results as a result of their lab tests showing that they were something wrong. But in fact, the data couldn't be trusted because the technology didn't work. Well, I'm not here saying that the technology of these wearables isn't working or isn't based and substantiated in something, but how accurate are they? And should you, a non-clinician, a non-trained professional, just a general consumer of fitness information, be using that to make these like radical changes in your lifestyle? And I hope that by presenting it this way, I'm not like, you're not already like listening and saying, oh, Marcus is against these things, because I'm not against them, and I've been for them in many respects for quite some time. But there's a limit to how much I think that it's viable to take the data that's on your app or your wearable and then be like, I got to do this.
Yeah. I think it's really helpful to look at what specifically about them is good data to use and make decisions, how we go about making decisions from the data that we're reading from our own fitness trackers when we're using them, when we might decide to use them versus not. And I think one thing that's important to state at the beginning of all this is I guarantee that a lot of people are out there saying, oh, well, my fitness tracker told me that I burned 200 calories on this run, so I get to go eat 200 calories right now. Or I overate last night when I went out and feel bad about that, and so I'm going to get on this treadmill until I burn 500 calories.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's bookmark that, because I think that is the biggest question that we're going to get about fitness trackers, and it's the most common misconception is around the calories that it says I burn versus the calories I'm supposed to eat versus like, do I make an adjustment about my daily caloric intake based upon what my fitness tracker is telling me? That's definitely something to bookmark to come back to, because we got to spend a significant amount of time on this episode, just debunking that, or at least talking about how we want to use that information.
Yeah.
I think what's also important to start off with is, how are you supposed to use, data in general, right? Because we're not a closed system, meaning like we don't have complete control over every variable input into our life,
right,
every output. So we're kind of this dynamic being that is encountering all these different types of things in the environment every day, and nobody is leading, very few people, if any, are leading a highly, highly structured, repeatable day every single day. So how can you even use this objective data to determine this was the cause, which a lot of people want to. They want to say, hey, I haven't lost weight because my fitness tracker says I'm only burning this many calories versus more calories.
Right.
And we get data from all over the place, a lot of objective data. People measure themselves in a lot of ways. One of the most common ways people measure themselves is stepping on the scale. So the scale is measuring essentially like it's a tool to see how you're interacting with the gravitational force of the earth. It's in between you and a solid object, and depending on how much mass you have, you get a weight that spits back at you. Now that's pretty good data. It's subjective. Yes, if you step on one scale and then you go step on another scale, or if you step on the scale in your bathroom and then you take the scale out of your bathroom and you go into your kitchen, you put the same scale on the kitchen floor, which is a different texture or different surface or has a different compression to it. It might look a little different. If you put your scale on a rug versus you put, you can manipulate it. But if you do it in the same spot every day at the same time, it's consistent at least, which that's the first way to evaluate if data is useful for you. Is it even consistent?
Yeah.
So if you go and get your body composition done this week, and you go at 8 a.m. on Monday, and you go to the lab or the office or whatever, the clinic that has an in-body scanner, and then next week you go on a Friday at 3 p.m., but you go get a DEXA scan somewhere.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks after that, on a Sunday night, like the gym that you're a member at is having a dunk tank come. and you go do a dunk tank body composition analysis. So you did 3 different types of body composition analysis in 3 different locations at 3 different times of day, 3 different times in the week. Like, there's not a lot of repeatability there, and there's going to be differences. So you'd be like, oh, I was 5% or 15% on Monday on the in-body, but then by the weekend I was 20% on the DEXA scan, and then 2 weeks later I was at 17% in the dunk tank. It's like, well, I don't think that's useful information for you, because you don't have consistency in how you gathered the information. So make sure that you're understanding the consistency of the information. That's going to tell you if it's reliable and whether you should start to actually use that. And then secondly, remember that the thing I opened up with, which is we're not a closed system. So if you're not tracking many variables, meaning let's say there's 10 things that you do every day and you're keeping 9 of them the same and 1 is changing, right? Unless that's your circumstance, then it's going to be very difficult to say, hey, the number on the scale went up because of variable number 5.
Yeah.
Maybe it was variable number 8, or maybe it was the combination of variable 6, 7, and 8 all together the way that you did it. And that's what actually led to you being a pound up today.
Right.
So again, it could be like, how much water did you drink yesterday? How much salt did you have on your food? Did you had the same number of calories, you had the same workout, you had the same all this stuff, but you just ate different types of food, or you slept a little bit less, or you had something that, or you have a virus, or I don't know. There's so many things that we can't control. So just to be careful of making these like quick, decisions about, hey, this happened, I did that, therefore, right? It's like, I had gas tonight. It must have been my lunch, and it must have been the garlic I had in lunch, because I've heard garlic can make people gassy. It's like, well, I don't know. But if 10 days in a row you have gas at night and you have the same garlicky lunch and nothing else is changing, and then on the 11th day you remove the garlic, you have everything the same and there's no gas, be like, oh, guess what? Like, the data was that I was farting, and the variable I changed was there was no garlic. So anyway, this is how we got to be careful about how we're approaching this with the scientific method, which is, controlling variables, having a hypothesis, testing it against something, having objective measurable results that you can then trust. And, all right, so we set the stage. Let's talk about fitness trackers.
Well, I think that it's very important to underscore this idea in general, because it spreads out to so many aspects of health and fitness, which is that it is so much about repeatable, consistent things that are relatively the same each time versus what you interact with in the gym that day, or on your plate that day, or on your fitness tracker that specific time.
Totally. Now, what some of the things that fitness trackers tell us, they can tell us how many steps we took in a day. They can attempt to tell us how many calories we burned in a day based upon their own calculator. They can tell us, beyond, some people have like these highly sophisticated ones that can tell them how far they walked, and the GPS location, and the speed of their workout, or their running or their cycling. A lot of the ones that people are using, like Whoop and Aura, they're actually evaluating things like heart rate variability, which is another piece of information that we should probably unpack a little bit, just give some general information on. They're evaluating sleep and different cycles in your sleep cycles. So, sleep is not just an on-off switch. You have different phases of sleep that you go through, and these devices have a way of determining which phase of sleep you're in. So they can give you information about how long you slept, and then also the quality of your sleep based upon how long you spent in each phase of sleep.
Yeah.
Deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep, and actually times when you might be awake in the middle of the night that you don't have recollection of, but you are just awake. And then some are able to like tell you what your oxygen saturation is, your respiratory rate. There's other variables that they're getting into, which I don't believe a lot of people are actually investigating and evaluating for themselves.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the general ones that people pay attention to.
Yep.
And in some instances, like the Whoop, or maybe there's some other, wearables that do this, they might have an algorithm where they look at all of those different data points, and then they give you what's called like a readiness score. You're ready for action or you're not ready for action. You seem, based upon these things, to be under recovered, or you're totally fresh and as good as you can and as ready as you could be. That could come in the way of a number. It could come in the way of a color. It could be like you're red, which is you're not ready, or you have a 10% readiness, or you have 100% readiness. And then people are sort of encouraged to make decisions upon their activities that day to like, hey, you shouldn't go hard because this thing says you're under recovered.
Right.
Now, a lot of people have that internal gauge, and if we can get people to really tune in to their bodies and have awareness of that, you wake up after a long night of drinking, you're hungover the next day, you don't feel great. You're like, I'm not feeling good. Do you need a wearable to tell you that you're not ready? And if you woke up and you were feeling crummy and you just had a bender, like a big drinking night, and it said you're ready to go, you're like, what the hell? Like, I don't feel ready to go. Are you going to go now? Oh, well, this means I got to go work out super hard right now. And there's been plenty of inconsistencies over the years where people are like, this doesn't make sense based upon how I'm feeling, what the wearable is telling me.
Yeah.
And those readiness scores are often computed mainly based on this thing called heart rate variability, this measurable biofeedback. I don't even know how to categorize it. Biological kind of measurement, which is looking at heart rate and then the slight variability between the frequency of beats. So, everyone you listen to a heartbeat, it sounds like thump, 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 a very rhythmic, very consistent cadence. But when you measure it at the very, down to like the milliseconds of how long those beats are in between, what you find is that there's variability. There's not 1 second between beats. It's 1.0112, and then the next one is 1.0115, and then the next one is 0.999963. Like, there's just millisecond differences in these heartbeats, and depending on how much variability there is between those beats, you can calculate someone's heart rate variability. In a rested, recovered state, you have more variability. In a under-rested, under-recovered, overstressed state, you get less variability. So it becomes more rhythmic. And then, so that's the data that they're pulling, which is very powerful. But the problem becomes like, how consistent are those, every single day? And is it always a perfect measurement? And I was tracking heart rate variability like 10 years ago with, chest straps and a little like thing that I plugged into my phone. And it would, and it was like, if I like got up out of bed and then got back down and like put it on, like my heart rate variability would be different had I just taken it before I woke up. And if I woke up and I was a little anxious about something, and I was just sort of like my heart rate was going, not because of like my rest and recovery, but because of like a mental stress, it might change like the how the reading is. And there were inconsistencies back then. So having like it in a wearable like the Whoop, where it's just taking that data all the time, that cut down on some of the maybe misinformation or the errors that were happening in how I was taking the data. But then I've talked to plenty of people who wear multiple of these devices at the same time. They'll have a Whoop strap on their left hand. They'll have a Whoop strap on their right hand. They'll have an Oura ring on the right hand, Oura ring on their left hand. They'll have the other device on this hand. And that when they compare the 5 data points on the same person, they see inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And so it can be like, this is where I think it gets problematic to just be like, I'm going to put all my stock into this thing.
Right.
And it is going to be the thing that just like absolutely, I'm going to make all the decisions I have to make in my life off of, because the data is not perfect.
Yeah.
Now, even though it's not perfect, it doesn't mean that we can't use it.
Yes.
What I think is really valuable about these things is if you have one single device and you are wearing it consistently, you can at least take the information that you're getting on a day-to-day basis and you can compare relative to how you've been in previous days, and you can start to see trends. And I think it's the trends that are really helpful. It's the trends based upon maybe the one new variable that you've introduced into your life that is impacting you in a particular way, or the device that you come back to every 3 to 6 months and you wear it for a couple weeks to see, hey, what's the status that I'm at right now? What's the state of my health, wellness, recovery with the current protocol that I'm following of exercise, recovery, work, family, lifestyle. And that's how I've been using it most recently, is I'll put my Whoop on every 3 months for a few weeks. I'll get some information and then I take it off, because I just find myself staring at numbers that I'm not using to actually make any measurable impact in my day-to-day life.
Right.
So I'll go ahead and pause and let you kind of maybe chime in and redirect the conversation if need be.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to hit on how that trend has been helpful in my own life, and also why I don't wear Whoop every day, along similar lines to what you said. But I think that for me, I was an early adopter of Whoop. I got one shortly after you did for the first time, I think, and wore that for a while. And the biggest change that it led to in my life was that it completely reshaped my relationship with alcohol. And that was actually something that was very powerful and impactful, because I had been not in a really extreme relationship with alcohol by any means, but had just been sort of one of those people that like has a glass of wine, maybe 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week. I don't really remember how much I was drinking back then, but it was like probably like a glass of wine every other day-ish, and maybe a couple more on the weekend. Not a lot by today's standards, I don't think. But I started to really see that trend of, wow, every single time I'm drinking, I have a lower recovery score, and I can feel it in my body, and I can see that my sleep is impacted. And that just started to add up and add up and add up over time. And it just became a very natural, I wasn't even really trying to reshape my alcohol use. It wasn't like I was like, oh, whoa, this is a serious problem, I need to like cut it off. It was more like, gradually, I'm like, I think I'll skip it and then maybe feel better the next day for my workout. And that just became more and more grounded in the habit as I was getting that feedback from the data over time.
Yeah.
So that's one area where it was super helpful. And then similar to you, I just stopped wearing it because I just felt like I'm looking at these numbers and it almost became a head game of, oh, well, it's telling me I'm in the yellow today, so maybe I'm not going to have as good a workout as I hoped. And I was actually feeling okay. And if I didn't have that in my mind, I'd probably just be totally fine. But now I'm like, oh, maybe I should dial back that, snatch a little bit or whatever.
Yeah.
Plants that little like seed of doubt sometimes.
Sure.
And that's what I didn't enjoy about it. And so I think something to think about when you have a wearable is, what am I actively using this for now? And is this general data collection helping me actually make changes that I'm testing against a hypothesis of how the data is stacking up? Or is it just like, oh, I've woken up and I've checked the box to make sure that I got, 8 hours of sleep or whatever? And,
absolutely. It's how can you use this effectively to either experiment with something new that you think you have an intuitive sense might help, or somebody has coached you to have, that's going to help you feel better, perform better, recover better, look better, whatever. And it's a great tool to have to get a different objective, measurement. I also think, the way that it impacted your relationship with alcohol, I think it just really is one of the best. I think it's important that people have access to an objective measurement tool to look at how they're sleeping, because I think a lot of people just say, "Oh, I sleep pretty good," or this, and I don't know that, and they don't quite know. I think there's some people are bad reporters of their own sleep, just like they can oftentimes be bad reporters of their own food intake and what they're eating. So I think that that's a great way to use it. But now a lot of that technology is getting built into even mattresses, and to, having the Oura Ring is a really simple way probably to do it, or, having a wrist thing that you put on. But, there's ways to kind of approach getting sleep data. The area that I think it's really problematic for people is that because we're such a food diet centered culture, people thinking about, this idea of I need to burn off calories. I think that fitness trackers do not do a good job of telling you, accurately how many calories your body burned in a day.
Right.
I've seen zero evidence that any fitness tracker has any accuracy whatsoever.
Right.
And so this is kind of a problem, because I hear a lot of people asking the question how they should use that information that's on their fitness tracker to impact their choice around food that they eat. And so I think this should be a whole separate topic that we'll cover in a podcast, possibly the next one, about how we base our choices on how much to eat relative to our exercise and our activity. But it's really not okay to say, okay, the tracker says I burned 1,300 calories today, so that's how many I need to eat. Or the tracker says I burned 700 calories, so on top of what I normally eat in a day, I'm going to go add 700 calories to what I'm eating. None of that makes any sense. It would be a stretch for this, but the only way I would possibly even consider using that information is if after a week, of normal activity and lifestyle and whatever, your fitness tracker says you burn on average 2,200 calories, let's just say. And then the next week, the whole week goes by, says, oh, you averaged 2,300 calories this week. And that kind of correlates to you just, you're like, oh, I kind of pushed it a little bit more. And then the next week it's back down to 22. And the next week it's up to this, you're seeing these trends again, what we've discussed. Then perhaps you can start to say, okay, I actually am putting forth a little bit more effort, but how are you going to use that information? Because perhaps you were moving more because your goal is to lose some weight. So you don't want to go and replace that with, an extra couple hundred calories every day, because that negates the effect of what you were trying to do.
Yes.
Really, the reason you want to even understand how many calories you're burning would be to equate it or measure it up against how many calories you're taking in, so that you might be able to manipulate your body weight and your body composition. I can see no other reason why somebody would care how many calories they burned. It's like, because it's not really a badge of anything. It's like, if you burn 5,000 calories today, that says the fitness tracker, like that again is not, we don't know what that was in terms of energy output. And you see people that are going and doing hard resistance training workouts, lifting weights, and their fitness tracker says they burn no calories.
Yeah.
But somebody goes and does cardio for an hour, burns a lot of calories. And who's better off in the long run when it comes to energy balance and having the body composition of their dreams? Like, arguably the person that lifted weights, who's going to build muscle, build up their basal metabolism, and then have like an ongoing steady burn of calories for days, months, weeks, and years to come.
Yep.
So it's just not something to track.
Yeah.
I believe.
Plus, the majority of the calories that you burn in a day are outside of the time that you spend in the gym, which is maybe 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours of your day, when you have all these other hours when you're burning energy, digesting and moving around and doing other things.
Yeah. So like I said, that's got to be a full episode in itself for us to unpack. But the very, like, the big important takeaway I think for this conversation is don't use your wearable to tell you how many calories you should or should not eat in a day, and don't get attached to the calorie number. Instead, and we've always coached this, keep your movement, your training, all the activity, the way that you approach your week as consistent as possible for week after week after week. Pay attention to and track your food. Understand consistently what you're eating every day. Doesn't mean you have to weigh and measure it, but at least know, hey, every day I have the same 4 meals, and I've done that for 2 weeks. Every day or every week, I've done the same number of workouts. I've walked about the same number of steps. I've gone to bed at the same, you've kept all the same variables for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then step on the scale before and after and see my weight went up, my weight went down, my weight stayed the same. If it went down, guess what? You burned more calories than you ate. If it went up, that means you ate more food and calories than you burned. And if it stayed the same, it means you're at maintenance. And the beauty of that is that once you get to that 2-week mark and you have those data points, it doesn't matter what your calorie tracker says, you know what you're burning every day on average, and you know what you're consuming. So if you want to change the direction of how your body's changing shape and moving, you just need to add more movement, subtract calories, add calories, reduce movement, whatever it is, to get the result that you want. So that's my final closing thought. How about you? Any closing thoughts on this one?
Closing question. If you really enjoy your wearable and get something specific out of that, I'd love to know, especially if you're in the functional bodybuilding universe, what does it help you with? What has it changed for you? I'm just curious. So you can DM me at Satya Khan on Instagram or send us a message from the functional bodybuilding website.
Likewise. And I am absolutely not closed off to wearables, and I use a wearable to track my steps every single day. I really appreciate that. And I have wearables that I use to track my sleep periodically so that I can see what the state of my current rest and recovery cycles look like.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
See ya.